Alrighty, folks, lecture number 24 here. After today, we only have 2 more lectures, but let's go back and have a quick refresher on what we did the last time we were together. I think I talked to you about the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, admitting James Meredith. He was the first African-American student to be admitted into Ole Miss, University of Mississippi. We also talked about Martin Luther King, Jr., Fred Abernathy, Fred Shuttlesworth, leading the nonviolent protest in Birmingham, Alabama in spring of 1963. We also mentioned George Wallace standing in the schoolhouse door, which he really was not standing in the schoolhouse door. He was making a political statement there. Vivian Malone, James Hood were the first students admitted to African-American students admitted to the University of Alabama. Somewhere through here we talked about Medgar Evers, who was an official with the NAACP, and for Medgar Evers, he was shot dead in his own backyard, or maybe his front yard. I'm not sure. He was shot dead in his yard there by Byron de la Beckwith. All right, we mentioned about Martin Luther King Jr., and he was present, of course, in the mall area that's at the Lincoln Memorial, near the Lincoln Memorial, and delivering his speech in August of 1963, I Have a Dream. And you could read that speech on my back wall in my classroom if you wish to do so. Not written by Martin Luther King Jr., however. And we also talked about in Selma, Alabama, Bloody Sunday. It took place on the 7th of March in 1965. Sorry about that. Still thinking about earlier in the semester. Actually, last semester. All right, and we also mentioned about the Nation of Islam. Black Muslim, Malcolm X, need to recognize that. Then we went into the section here on Vietnam. Let me take off this little bush hat here. And Vietnam. And as George F. Kennedy said, it was the worst nightmare in the history of the United States, in the 200 years of existence of the United States. And you got familiar with Ho Chi Minh. And I think I mentioned to you about the defeat of the French at Dien Bien Phu. And we also got introduced to the leader, if you will, of South Vietnam, Ngo Dinh Diem. Alrighty, so let's, and I think in the last minutes of the class period, we talked about the Gulf of Tonkin resolution that took place. It gave the United States military all rights to defend themselves here. So actually, we're now going to get into that war. So we're going to spend a good bit of class period here talking about Vietnam, and then we will leave Vietnam, get into some of the politics, and the next time we get together, we will finish up that section on Vietnam. It was a tragedy. It honestly was here, my friends. All right, but we're going to begin in 1964. Operation Rolling Thunder. This was Lyndon Baines Johnson that approved this, and this will be the unrelenting bombing of North Vietnam. And it's just going to be wave after wave of bombers, and intermittently, by the way, from 1964 to 1972. Every identifiable target of military value in Vietnam, North Vietnam, was destroyed. The North Vietnamese were very resourceful people. They literally just went underground, took lives of existence underground. We used a B-52 Stratofortress, silent death, whispering death, if you will. They flew so high you could hardly see them. You could not hear them, and then all of a sudden, just the bombs would come cascading down upon them. And it was just a horrible, horrible affair. But anyway, let's go back to my camera here, folks. I'm going to give you some figures here as we began to get involved. And I say the United States gets involved in Vietnam, and we will do so here in a place which is called Da Nang. And we will send 2 battalions of Marines in 1965 and make an amphibious landing, as a matter of fact, even though you had dry ground and a rampway that you could have exited the ship. But that's not the Marine Corps style. So anyway, let's go back here. And let's just watch how things escalate in Vietnam. In March of 1965, like I said, we had 2 battalions of Marines that landed at Da Nang. But I didn't even mention that they were Marines, but they are. And watch how things escalate here. By the end of 1965, we had 180,000 troops. And I'm talking about Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines. But we had 180,000 troops in Vietnam by 1966. We had 360,000 troops in Vietnam in 1967, 500,000 troops. And it will cap in 1968 between 538,000 and 540,000. 2.5 million soldiers, Marines, women, sailors, airmen. 2.5 million American forces served in Vietnam. You can imagine that here. It's my generation, so when you look at me, you'll see what a Vietnam veteran looks like. And I did not go to Vietnam. I was very, very fortunate with that. I was in the Army during the Vietnam War, but I was sent to Germany and whatever. Okay, so I'm going to show you some photographs, but Let me give you a little background before we get into the photographs. What our military would do, we would conduct these search and destroy missions, go into a village there, searching for evidence of the VC, the Viet Cong. It's very important for us to maintain body counts, and these body counts, which were grossly exaggerated. And, the young commanders there were trying to make themselves look good, so when the young lieutenant would get on the radio and talk to his company commander, the first thing the company commander would say is, what is a body count? And a young lieutenant trying to make himself look good, he'd say, well, sir, we got 10 of them. And where it actually perhaps there was none, And then the company commander would call the battalion commander, and the first thing the battalion commander would say is, what's the body count? Well, that 10 suddenly jumps up to, we got 50 of them. And we killed the entire population of North Vietnam 2 times over here, my friends. So anyway, that's body counts. We don't do body counts anymore. What I mentioned a few minutes ago, type of bomber we would use, the B-52 Stratofortress. I don't think I have a photograph of one. Whatever. Let's see here. Well, I want to go ahead and show you some photographs, and it's going to take a few minutes here to go through these. And let's see if I can get this right without dropping all of these. All right, let me show you a typical workhorse in the Army of Vietnam here. This is a Huey helicopter, UH-1, if you will. And if you can imagine this, Vietnam is a very rugged terrain, a lot of jungle there. And you can take this helicopter here holds about 13 individuals here. You've got a crew chief, maybe a door gunner or 2, pilot, co-pilots, so you can transport about 8 men here, and you can do so very, very quickly here. You can insert a company of individuals, rapidly a couple hundred miles away. So anyway, that was used there. Let's see what else we have. This is a typical search and destroy mission. Notice the rice paddies there. Always a risk for booby traps. And let's see who else. Captured, or I should say suspected Viet Cong there. Not much respect for the individual. Tie a rope around the neck, and just drag them along. You can see a battle tank in the background. And Americans began to suffer some casualties here, such as this. I'll give you some more accurate numbers at a later time. Pardon me. You're looking at a Armored Personnel Carrier, APC 113, I believe is what it is. It says on the back here, U.S. Army. If you look at these guys, they're wearing flak vests, and that's a 50 caliber machine gun, which is on the front of that APC. Oh, and I didn't show you there, the ramp actually falls down on the back here. It falls down, and you can transport maybe 10 guys inside, 8 to 10 individuals there. Wounded personnel. And this photograph, we see Marines. They're behind I can't tell what that is, if it's a tank or an armored or a self-propelled weapon there. Okay, on we go here. More photographs here showing you the type of weapon that we used later. Not at first, we used an M14 rifle at first. What this individual soldier is carrying there, that is an M16. See if I can find one for you here. Let me see here. Showing you an M16, what it looks like. Same photograph I showed you a few minutes ago there. All right, so on we go with other photographs. A Marine helicopter, and this helicopter has been down, by rifle fire, probably a rocket-propelled grenade, RPG-7, and unfortunate American dead here. We have 52,000 that will be killed in Vietnam here. One is too many, my friends. I'm telling you there. It's tragic. A number of my friends went to Vietnam. I went to school with them, high school with them. They went to Vietnam and did not come back, And unfortunate. Again, an insertion mission here, coming into an LZ, a landing zone. And transporting a deceased soldier. This is a poncho, by the way. Yeah. Talking to my friends that survived Vietnam, just talked about just the incessant rain during the monsoon season. Here's a soldier trying to get a little shelter under a poncho. The war just literally it wore out the President of the United States, Lyndon Baines Johnson. And I don't mean to contradict myself, because I'm going to tell you in a few minutes that, and during the first year or so, most Americans were positive about their involvement in Vietnam. But as the American casualties began to grow there, we had writers, reporters coming back and reporting about the futility of war, then the American public began to turn against the war. All right, so anyway, let's see what else I have in store for you. In fact, let's go back here so you won't have to stare at me looking around for my materials here. And like I said, we're going to see that in late 1865, how do I keep saying that? In 1965, there was generally quite a bit of support for the war. But anyway, like I said, gradually the press in particular will turn the American public against the war. It didn't help matters that we had individuals here. I want to share something with you here. And this is an individual I don't know if you recognize here. In fact, he had 3 Purple Hearts here. His name is John Kerry, Senator from the United States, later Senator in the United States. Served in Vietnam, but became a very avid anti-war individual. Some of you may be familiar with this actress, Jane Fonda. And when you look at that photograph of Jane Fonda, she is in Hanoi. That's in North Vietnam. She's actually wearing a North Vietnamese helmet. You can see North Vietnamese soldiers that are behind her here. Of course, she's had to live with this, since that time, 1966-67. All right, in August of 1967, LBJ asked Congress for a war tax. And Congress responded and said, no, you're going to have to cut $6 billion out of the Great Society. So you got to remember the Great Society is a welfare program, was very, very expensive here, and the war is very, very expensive. And what Congress was sending a message to the president saying, you can have one or the other. You can have guns or you can have butter, but you're not going to have both of those. Well, all right, so let's move on here, folks. And in January of 1968, first date of the Vietnamese Lunar New Year, the North Vietnamese launched a major campaign. It is referred to as the TET Offensive. First day of the Vietnamese New Year's here. It is the TET Offensive. And in this campaign, we'll find that the North Vietnamese Army, now look at the abbreviation. I want you to know this. The NVA, North Vietnamese Army. This is a professional army. It's not the VC. So you have the VC that the Americans are fighting, but you also had the NVA, the North Vietnamese Army. And they attacked on my birthday in 1968. I was a second-year student. I was a sophomore in college at that time. But they attacked 5 of 6 major cities in South Vietnam and 39 of 44 provinces here. And it was a major operation. This was in combination with the Viet Cong, by the way. And this is the type of helmet that the American troops wore in Vietnam. And anyway, you can kind of see what it looks like here. But I want to share something with you here. And this article says, Happy New Year. Happy New Year from Hanoi. And the North Vietnamese Army just came roaring across the DMZ. That's on the 17th parallel. And actually took the city of Hue. Hue is spelled H-U-E. And here it is right here, Hue, which is located on the Perfume River, by the way. Nice city, but it was taken by the North Vietnamese Army. This is unbelievable. How in the world could this happen here? All right, for the United States, we quickly gained control. It took us about 3 weeks to regain control of Hue, but the North Vietnamese VC, the Viet Cong, actually went in and took over the United States Embassy. United States Embassy, which is in Saigon. They didn't hold it very long, but it's just the effect of this. They actually took over control of the U.S. Embassy. All right, now all of this is being filmed. It's coming into the evening news for the Americans back home watching all of this. We thought we had control of this situation. It didn't help matters here. I want you to look at the top photograph. And this is a South Vietnamese general who had rounded up a suspected Viet Cong. And you can see that the general here has pulled his service pistol, pointing it to the side of the head of this young man, suspected VC, and he shot him dead. Just like that, blew his head off. And we in America, sitting at home watching the evening news, this is the sort of thing that we're actually seeing. And immediately, the support for the war after the TET Offensive, it just turned sour. And we had literally, 2/3 of Americans wanting to get out of Vietnam. What were we accomplishing there? I don't know. Very, very little with that. All right, so anyway, that was a TET Offensive here. It was a terrible defeat for the North Vietnamese, but it was a political victory for the North Vietnamese. This was in 1968. The North Vietnamese Army would not be able to launch another major campaign for 4 years. All right, so let's take a look at another term here. the Army of the Republic of Vietnam. It is called ARVID, Army of the Republic of Vietnam. This is not the NVA. It's not the North Vietnamese Army. This is a South Vietnamese Army, which will fight, well, shall we say, kind of alongside the American troops. Actually, it's American troops fighting alongside of the ARVID troops. All right, so differentiate between those two. Okay, and there I wrote this out for you here. The Viet Cong briefly gained control of the U.S. Embassy in Saigon. Now, the American general for a good portion of the war was that of General William Westmoreland. And in fact, I'm sitting here looking straight ahead, and I can see a photograph of General Westmoreland hanging on the wall in my office where I'm delivering this lecture from, and it's an autographed copy, by the way. So if you're taking my class and you're down in the classroom after the class, come out and take a look at the autograph photo of General William Westmoreland. And I visited his grave just a couple of summers ago. He's buried at West Point, by the way. All right, here's what I said a second ago. The TET offensive was a severe military loss for the NVA, but it was a psychological victory. All right, so let's take a look at our presidential election of 1968. And this is, and I will tell you this, in this presidential election in 1968, that LBJ refused the nomination. I'll share a quote with you. "I shall not seek and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president." So LBJ is out. His popularity has dropped to 35%. So he was not going to win this presidential election. So Eugene McCarthy on the Democratic side threw in his hat. I didn't write his name out for you. Vice President Hubert Humphrey, he threw his hat in the ring. And Robert Kennedy, RFK, very popular individual, and he announced his candidacy likewise here, and we'll see a few others. But before we go any further with this, I want to tell you about a tragedy that took place, and this will occur on the 4th of April in 1968. Remember what I said about the 60s here. It just cannot get any worse. But every day it got worse. And on this date here, 4th April 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was in Memphis, Tennessee, and he was speaking in support of a strike that was taking place by sanitation workers, like trash collectors and that sort of thing. And he was standing at the Lorraine Hotel. Did I write it out for you here? In fact, he was standing at the Lorraine Hotel. Let me show you what it looks like here. There it is. Notice the wreath, which is right up here, and that's where he was standing, right here. Here's a close-up view of it. And did I have it right? Yeah, I do have it right. And he was leaning over. He's leaning over the rail there. He took a pause in his speech, and he was leaning over the rail. Some people say he was talking to Jesse Jackson down below. I just don't know. It was right after 6 p.m., and he leaned over the rail, and some people say he was talking to a saxophone player named Ben Branch. And Martin Luther King made a statement. He said, "Ben, make sure you play Precious Lord, Take My Hand in the meeting tonight, and play it real pretty." And those were the last words that Martin Luther King Jr. spoke, because an assassin standing across the way with a rifle took a shot at Martin Luther King Jr. and took that man's life. A very, very tragic event. Today you can go there if you wish to do so, to the Lorraine Hotel. It is the site of the National Civil Rights Museum. There is a fee to go through this, but now it's not too far from Beale Street. You can walk from Beale Street if you can tear yourself away from there, and go over to the Lorraine Hotel, National Civil Rights Museum. When I was there, got a lot of stairs. I was the only white person there, but that's history. That's history, and I wanted to experience that. Well, what do you think is going to happen to the country here? Well, major riots will take place in 60 cities. 47 people died, 3,000 individuals injured. We had 27,000 arrests that took place as a result of that. It just cannot get any worse. It cannot get any worse. But it does. And sure enough, what we're going to find here is on the 5th of June in 1968, Robert Francis Kennedy, RFK, JFK's brother, was celebrating his victory in the California primary. And he was in Los Angeles and was in the Ambassador Hotel. He'd finished his speech. The Ambassador Hotel was just absolutely packed with individuals. So to make an exit, RFK was going to leave through the kitchen, and it was safer to go through the kitchen, less people that were present there. And when he did so, there was a man with a .22 caliber pistol, and this man stepped up beside RFK and shot him multiple times. Here we see the headlines. I've got that actual newspaper, by the way. This is Daily Mountain Eagle. I don't read Daily Mountain Eagle anymore. I find it to be too biased. But anyway, Jasper, Alabama, Wednesday, June 5th, 1968, and RFK may not make it. Here he is lying there on his back, shot multiple times, if you will. He was shot with this pistol here. It's a .22 caliber Ivan Johnson cadet pistol. It's an 8-shot pistol, if you will, and he emptied the pistol. And the person that did this was Sirhan Sirhan. He was a Palestinian, and he was actually from Jerusalem, if I remember right. And at an early age, 1 or 2, his parents brought him to the United States, and they lived in the United States. And here's a photo of him. He's still in prison today. He was on death row, but California abolished the death penalty years ago, and so he is still rotting away in that prison. I can't remember what it is. I better not give that to you without being absolutely sure of that anyway. All right, hit down below here. We see RFK, JFK. All right, you spurred my desire to find the name of that prison. It's the Richard J. Donovan Correction Facility in San Diego County here. His next parole hearing for Sirhan Sirhan is in the year 2021. All right, so maybe they'll release him. I certainly hope that they do not. Okay, so back to the Democratic Convention here, folks. And the Democratic Convention took place in 1968. I remember seeing this. It was just a bedlam, if you will. It took place in Chicago. You had peace activists that were present there, climbing all over statues. But nonetheless, Hubert Humphrey got the nomination, Democratic nomination. And throwing his hat in the ring was that of George Wallace. And George Wallace was with the American Independence Party. This was... Here, I'm looking around for something here, and I'll share some. Here we go. I think I can get this under here. All right. Wallace for president. Wallace for president. I preserved these stickers here, campaign stickers, from those days there. All right, so George Wallace threw his hat in. He was very popular at one time. His popularity rose to 20%. That is absolutely amazing for a third-party candidate. Governor of Alabama. And the Republicans chose as their nominee Tricky Dicky, Richard Nixon. Peace with honor here. And he promised to get us out of Vietnam, and get us out of Vietnam with honor. Here's a good book about Vietnam if you wish to read this. United States and Vietnam, 1950-1975, so that's 25 years. All right, and I want to also show you something else. I'm trying to get some of the Vietnam things out. I'll have to go back to myself here. I hope you class members, if you're in Washington, D.C., will take the time to go by the Vietnam Memorial, the Vietnam Wall. This is what it looks like here. And on the back here, you'll find 58,209 names that have been carved, etched, or whatever you call it, into the Vietnam Memorial. Like I said earlier, repeat myself, a number of my friends, their names are on that wall, by the way. Okay, so anyway, let's move on here. So we have those three candidates there of Hubert Humphrey and George Wallace and that of Richard Nixon. All right, so let's take a look at our election results here in 1968. I could not vote here. I'm not old enough. During those days, you had to be 21 years of age to vote. So Nixon is going to pick up, along with Spiro Agnew. Spiro Agnew was vice president, 43.4% of the popular votes, and 301 electoral votes, and Hubert Humphrey 42.7 and 191, and George Wallace, amazing here for a third-party candidate, got 46 electoral votes and 13.5 in the popular vote here. So who wins the presidential election in 1968? And Richard Nixon, and there he is. All right. Nixon was very popular, as a matter of fact. I liked him, in the 1972 election. I did vote for him. I'll tell you about the 1972 election later on. It's an unbelievable election there. But anyway, so Richard Nixon is the president of the United States. All right, so let's move on here, folks. We've got a lot to cover. ground to cover. And let's get our lighting right. And what Richard Nixon is going to represent, this was just a strong conservative reaction to just the liberal programs of the Great Society under Lyndon Baines Johnson. And Richard Nixon represented hardworking, white, middle-class America. And for many Americans that fit into that category, they were just tired of this liberal new left, these radical college students who would undergo these student protests in the Vietnam War. Now, let me tell you the way it works here, folks. During that time, we had a conscription. We had a draft army. You could enlist if you wished to do so. In fact, I did. I enlisted in ROTC. But at that time, everybody had to carry a draft card. Every male had to carry a draft card. And this was your ticket to literally life or death. Now, I'm going to show you what a draft card looks like. And here's some that were my draft cards that I preserved from that period of time. And you had to carry these. You could go to jail if you didn't carry your draft card with you there. A lot of people, protesters, would burn their draft cards and risk being jailed as a result of that. I had several of my friends that left the country, and they actually went to Canada. Well, I think they went to Canada anyway, so that they could avoid the draft. But let me show you the way the system works here. You had draft designations here of 1A. 1A meant that you were first and you're ready to go. You're ready to go. You're available. And then we had the 1S. This meant that you were ready to go, but you had a student deferment. And then we had the 4F. Now, we always look down our noses at the 4F individuals. These are individuals that had medical problems. They had medical injuries like flat feet or something like that. That would give them a deferment. And like I said, we kind of look disgustingly at those shirkers, as we call them anyway. And then what I had 1D, which meant that I was deferred because I was in ROTC at that time, And what that meant is that when I graduated from Alabama, and I was commissioned as second lieutenant, then I was ready to go, and I would go. All right, so like I said, that's what you had. So if you look at this, I want you to stop and think about this for a second here. So if you think about this, this meant that if you could afford college, you could go into college, you could leave Walker High School and go into college, and you got a draft deferment. Now, that meant that your family had to be wealthy enough to pay for your college. During that time, we did not have student loans that I'm aware of. There's no Pell Grant, and most of you folks are on Pell Grant. So you can imagine that if you did not have Pell Grant and your parents were trying to get you through college and you worked just an average job, you don't have that money to send your kid off to college. So what happens there is that you don't go to college, and if you don't go to college, then your draft designation is changed to 1A. Instead of 1S, it's 1A right out of high school. And that's what happens. That's what happens. It's as quick as that. And if you go to college, such as Walker College, which is Bevel State now, and you failed out, then the college registrar would notify the draft board that you had dropped out of college because you failed out of college. It's a wonderful incentive for studying, by the way. And they would notify the draft board that you had dropped out, and I promise you, within the next week, you're going to receive a letter. And this letter is going to tell you to report to the draft board for a recruiting agent to pick you up, take you down to Gunner or Maxwell Air Force Base, and you'll be given a very quick physical, and in all probability, you're going to pass that physical, and then you're going to be wearing green, if you understand what I'm talking about. You're going to be wearing a military uniform. So it was not a fair system. If you had some money and you could stay in college, you weren't drafted. If you didn't, well, you went to Vietnam. So that meant that minorities, individuals at low income levels, those were the people that were going to Vietnam. So it was not fair. It was not fair at all. So in 1969, the country adopted a lottery system. And I remember this very, very well here at the University of Alabama. And I didn't have to worry about this because I was in ROTC and I knew my fate. But anyway, for the other guys, I can remember the night just like it was yesterday. All these guys, about 20, 30 guys, all gathered around, everybody drinking beer, and cutting up, as they drew your birthdays out, 1 through 365. And I ended up, did I write it down here? I had 159. I never would have been drafted, for 1969. I never would have been drafted for Vietnam. But it didn't make a difference because I was already committed for ROTC. Okay, so let's move on. We're also going to see during this time a counterculture to take place here. These are known as the hippies. These were the hippies. They would smoke marijuana, use LSD. I never saw LSD, in the entire time that I was in college here. I saw a lot of marijuana. My fraternity was split right down the middle. You had the beer drinkers and you had the potheads, and nobody crossed the line. You didn't have the pot users drinking beer, and you didn't have the beer guys smoking marijuana. All right, so anyway, I never saw LSD. But these were the hippies, the counterculture. I never heard the term counterculture in the entire time I was in college. It was only later, such as what you're seeing right here. Here's a young lady. This came from my yearbook from 1969 or 1970. A young lady there, a typical hippie, in the background too. But I would always try to move up and sit by one of these hippie girls like this, because I always thought that they were cute. All right, so anyway, big changes are going to take place with that. Did I write it out for you here? Okay, and let me move on here. We're going to see the beginnings of a sexual revolution at this time. It was concurrent with this. We're going to have several events to take place here. Birth control pills. Birth control pills are going to become available. When I was in high school, and I graduated high school in 1967, Walker High School, you didn't have birth control pills. You really didn't. So sexual behavior had to be very, very closely monitored with that. If a young lady and a senior, junior in high school was impregnated, she disappeared, and you wouldn't see her again for the next 8 months or so. And she would finally come back, and we would all ask, where's so-and-so? So, well, I don't know. I think she's down in Mississippi someplace. And then 8 months, 9 months later, the person that was missing would come back. All right, and without child, too, by the way, because that child would be adopted here. Also, we had 1973 Roe v. Wade. No discussion on that issue here. But Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion. So what I'm trying to tell you, good folks, here is that we're going to see a sexual revolution to take place here. And we had such sayings as make love, not war, tune in, turn on, and drop out. Do your own thing, baby, and sock it to me, baby. All right, so anyway, that was kind of interesting there. What do you think is going to happen to the sexually transmitted disease incident rate in America for young folks? Well, you know exactly what is going to happen. It is going to skyrocket. I remember being down at the University of Alabama and asking one of my close friends at that time, I said, hey, let's go on campus, walk around campus, try to pick up chicks. And he looked at me and said, I can't, man. He said, I can't. I got to clap. I thought, oh, my gosh, you need to go over to the infirmary and have it taken care of. Whatever. That's a true story, by the way. All right, so on we go here. And let's see what else is going to take place. All right, we're going to see music. Music's going to change considerably from what we've had before. We had the Beatles. We had the Beatles at that time, Chubby Checker, Little Richard. But now the music's going to change. We're going to see new groups such as the Beatles, and the Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, the Animals. I could just go on and on and on with others there. And Muddy Rivers, and Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, Janis Joplin. I saw Janis Joplin live at the University of Alabama over in Coleman Coliseum, and I'm telling you, good folks, she was so wasted she couldn't even perform on the stage. But anyway, always liked her. All right, and she died shortly after that. On the 15th through the 18th of August in 1969, 400,000 young people gathered at a farmer's field in Bethel, New York, to attend one of the largest rock festivals, if not the largest, ever. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, and this is called Woodstock. And my daughter gave me a match set, DVDs of Woodstock, which I'm not even a music listener, by the way, not anymore. Okay, so on we go here. Popular television programs of that period, all of these are good in their own way. All in the Family, Mary Tyler Moore, MASH. I never was a MASH fan. Andy Griffith, still watch Andy Griffith, every afternoon almost. Twilight Zone, love Twilight Zone. Well, little boy, it just frightened me to death. Star Trek, never missed a feature. Never missed a Star Trek show there. As long as it had Captain Kirk, the young Captain Kirk. Saturday Night Live, and Saturday Night Live was funny back then. It's not a political assassination like it is today anyway. Beverly Hillbillies, that was always fun to watch too. Okay, in 1969, the Gay Liberation Front Gay Liberation Front was established, in which gays and lesbians were demanding the same rights as minorities had demanded too. 1993, we were years ahead. President Clinton lifted the ban on gays and lesbians in the military. This was against an avalanche of criticism. Don't ask, don't tell, and by the way, and don't harass too. And today gays and lesbians and marriages are allowed between members of the same sex, in the military today. All right, moving on here. Okay, another movement's going to take place. Let me get these hippies out of here. And another movement that's going to take place is women's liberation. Women's lib. Big movement here. Women were demanding the same rights as men and same pay as men too, same opportunities as males. Betty Friedan, and she wrote this book called The Feminine Mystique. I think I've got a likeness here. Let me continue for a second here. Gloria Steinem with MS Magazine, Germaine Greer, The Female Eunuch. And we can look at a couple of these individuals here. Betty Friedan here, where my fingers are, and Germaine Greer with the Female Eunuch, who's on the opposite side with Boots on. All right, so women's liberation. And in its worst extreme, these women would reject heterosexual marriage. He didn't wear bras, if you will, would not accept any type of gentlemanly offer, such as opening a door for somebody. It was really kind of weird at that time. All right, and let's go through a couple of first here. Sandra Day O'Connor, and it's not Sandra D. O'Connor, as one of my students answered that once. Sandra Day O'Connor was the first female Supreme Court justice. And later she would be followed. Yeah, she was appointed by Ronald Reagan, by the way. Then Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Or actually, I think it's pronounced Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who just recently passed away, by the way. And Sandra Day O'Connor was appointed under the Reagan administration. And I was trying to see here. And anyway, and then we also had Sonia Sotomayor, appointed under Barack Obama's administration. And just recently here, a lot of controversy associated with this. Didn't have any controversy with the first three females, but you did have some controversy with Amy Coney Barrett, and she became the fourth female Supreme Court justice who replaced Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And this was done under the Donald Trump administration here. And Shirley Chisholm, another first, was the first black congresswoman. Did I write it down? I think she served 8 terms. I believe that's what it was. With Shirley Chisholm. This is what she looks like right here. She's from New York, by the way. Served 7 terms, Shirley Chisholm. Unbought and unbossed. And let's see who else we have here. Go on down here. And 1984, Geraldine Ferraro was the first female to run on a major party ticket during our next election. I'll show you a photograph of Geraldine Ferraro. And let's see here. We also had Hillary Clinton, who is ran for presidency in 2008, 2016, successfully anyway, just recently, and I was trying to cover this up, and I missed it here. Kamala Harris, first minority vice president, but as I'm giving this lecture here, folks, that is not an affirmative. We don't know that right at this point. So anyway, okay, so that's a snapshot there, my friends, here, a little bit shorter lecture here. I'm actually under 40 minutes here. We're winding things down for this course. 2 more lectures here, but that's okay. We'll end up a little bit early today. All right, so that's all for today, but stay up with your material here, folks, and when we come back, we're going to finish up this war in Vietnam, and then we're going to talk all about Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan and Gerald Ford and whatever. Okay, thank you very much.